Hi everybody, Keith Tanner here from Flyin Miata, and today I'm going to be talking about the Flyin Miata V8 program and what happened to it, what's going on. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments if you're watching this live. If you're watching this in the future, please put them in the comments. We will do our best to address them. In this particular video, we may not address every single comment based on the nature of some of the feelings around this project, but we do read them all. So if you do enjoy the sort of content you see today, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff. You know how it works. We do at least one live video every week, and we do a number of other videos that are being released during the course of the week or the month or whatever. So keep your eye on our channel. There's always lots of good stuff coming at all sorts of different topics. But they all seem to do with Miatas. Go figure. Anyhow, I'm going to give you a brief history lesson. Back in 2008, we decided to put an LS engine in a Miata. We worked with V8 roadsters and we built Elvis. We took a car that we had originally built for a bunch of other purposes, yanked out the four-cylinder that was a high compression, naturally aspirated 2-liter with roller barrel throttle bodies, I think at the time, and we built, well, eventually it turned into that, but we turned that into a Pathfinder car. We started building them for customers. We started selling parts to customers for DIY. And by the time we stopped the program, we had built 40 cars. 2 of them were Exocets, the others were all Miatas. And of those Miatas, I think 5 of them were ND chassis cars. That's the one that really got us the most attention. People knew we'd been building the V8s for a while, but in the fall of 2016, we took an ND Miata, Indy, and tore it down and did the first LS conversion on an ND chassis Miata. And we were still, by the time we finished, we're still the only people who have ever done this, partly because of the work to put it in there, partly because of the electronic challenges to make it work. But this is the original, and it actually just sold on Bring a Trailer. So unfortunately, we are sad to see it go. Indy's been a big part of our life since it showed up on the first boat full of NDs to arrive in North America, but Indy is moving on. So when Indy sold on Bring a Trailer, it got a lot of attention. And certain media outlets noticed that we were no longer selling V8 turnkey cars. This wasn't news. We actually built our last one in 2019. It had been 3 years since we stopped building them, and we had made that public when there was a previous sale of a V8 ND. There's only been 2 of them have ever sold on the secondary market, and when the first one sold, we had just stopped building more, so we knew it was one of 5. And when this one came out, it got noticed. An article got published that proclaimed that the entire reason we were doing it was because of the big bad emissions regulations, and all of the usual suspects heard what they wanted to hear and started yelling and screaming and, well, you know, the usual. No room for balanced discourse, shall we say. Of all the media outlets that have published articles on this, only one of them actually reached out to us before publishing their article. So congratulations, Jalopnik, you win the journalism award. No one else even contacted us about this before publishing their articles, and many of them are just publishing them based on things that they have read on other published things, and it's like the old game of telephone. It's getting further and further away from the truth. So I'm going to talk about why we decided to stop building cars, why we decided to stop selling parts for cars, and the actual reasons behind them. And they're much more mundane than the man is shutting us down. The primary reason, I'll start with the actual builds of the custom cars first. The main reason we stopped doing that was resources. We're not that big a company. Any time spent building a car like Indy for a customer was time that our R&D staff wasn't working on all the other platforms that we sell. If we want to build, you know, right now you can't see it on camera, but we're working on forced induction on a new platform over here. And the resources to do that were being used to build custom cars. So we had to look at what we were getting out of our employees' time. What was the most valuable thing to us as a company? And the answer to that is the ability to do R&D for the majority of our customers instead of building a small number of custom cars. It's not something that made us happy. We didn't want to do it, but our job is to stay in business. We've been in business for 39 years. We want to stay in business longer, and the right choice for the business was to do that. There was a secondary aspect to that as well, and that is that we were changing our back-end systems. To be a more efficient e-commerce vendor meant shutting down some of the things that allowed us to build custom cars easily. Being able to get one-off parts is a very different thing from being able to shovel as many packages out the door as possible. The systems we have in place to manage our in-house manufacturing assembly didn't work well with one-off stuff. And so again, it was one of those things where it just didn't mesh well with the rest of the company. We started off back 39 years ago, 1983. We were a Volkswagen Audi Porsche service shop. So we started off renting on cars. That's where our history is. So it did hurt to shut that down, but it was unfortunately the thing we had to do. So that's what happened to the turnkey cars. And as part of that, we were also looking at the parts sales. We stopped selling parts for the NAs, NBs, and NCs simply because there were already well-established players in that market. They were not selling in very high numbers because the market had shifted a little bit. Our customers were not the same ones that were buying those parts. And they were high cost to keep on the shelf and low volume, which means that again, from a resource standpoint, from a business standpoint, they were not good for the company overall. And that unfortunately was also the case for the ND parts. We had minimum quantities we had to build. The headers on those things, for example, we had to get at least 10 made at a time. The vendors who were making them were getting less eager to make them. The cost of building 10 on a kit that you might only sell a few of a year gets very expensive when you start inventorying that. All these boring business reasons. None of this sort of, we got, black jacketed EPA agents busting down the doors, raiding the place, none of that sort of stuff. Just boring old business decisions. So that's a big part of it. Now emissions. That is a legitimate thing. That was also a factor. It wasn't the only factor, it wasn't the primary factor, but it was a factor. The EPA and the ARB, the California Air Resources Board as well, but mostly the EPA, is cracking down on mobile sources of emissions. It's a national compliance initiative. That basically means that it's been identified as for a 3-year period going to be an area of increased enforcement, although it's something that's been going on for a while. And since the 70s, it's not been legal to remove or alter emissions equipment. This is not a new law. This is something that's been in the case for a long time. The EPA turned a blind eye to a lot of parts that were being sold for performance purposes because they're very small numbers. They weren't having a big effect until a certain subset of the aftermarket community started flaunting this and rolling coal and basically making a pest out of themselves and bringing attention to the entire industry. And from a legislative standpoint, there's no difference between a Miata and a lifted diesel pickup truck. It's the same thing. They're both light-duty vehicles. They were both equipped with emissions equipment from the factory, and the rules that apply to diesel pickup trucks also apply to little sports cars. So enforcing one means enforcing them all. So that's where a lot of it came from. We do a lot of work with the emissions boards. When I go to SEMA, I don't spend my time looking at shiny cars. I spend it sitting in seminars, in one-on-one meetings with SEMA, with EPA, with ARB. And this is the world we live in. These particular regulations are being enforced. And since we want to stay in business for another 39 years, we're being proactive about that. We are making sure that we do not put ourselves in a position where we get fined for selling non-compliant parts, emissions delete parts. Now, it's a little bit of a stretch for that to happen with engine swaps. As far as I know, there have been no cases, no judgments brought against engine swap companies. But you just add that to the business reasons, and that's what happened to the V8 parts for DIY and for turnkeys. Do we have any questions over there, Mike? No questions. I know, this is not exciting stuff. It's nowhere near as exciting as the man came to take our toys away and we resisted or we didn't resist and we folded and we caved to the greens or whatever kind of junk you're reading on blogs. Don't believe it. It's much more mundane than that.
I do have one question.
Oh, we do have a question over here, Mike.
Will FM provide a punch list for an individual to source and install their own V8 conversions?
Okay, the question is, will we provide a punch list in order to source parts for your own V8 conversions? I think with our new website, I don't think it's up there right now, but we have in the past had a list of all the parts we used to use when we were building turnkeys for the NAs, MBs, and NCs. And I'll make sure that gets back up there because it's a great thing to use as a checklist if you are going to do something like this. You can look at it and say, wow, look at all the things I need to take into account. Even if it's not a V8, if it's an LFX, if it's a K-series, whatever you're looking to put in there, it's a good list, I think, to see overall. It's just how big a job are you looking at? So we'll put that back up there. V8 Roadsters does still supply parts for the NAs, the MBs, the NCs, and there are some other sources for those as well. So there are certain places to get those. For the NDs, there's news coming. There's a company that is working on building their Pathfinder car right now. They're using our designs. They will be going public with, I think, both turnkeys and part sales. Not for us to decide, but I believe that is coming. Keep your eyes open. They don't want to go public with it until the Pathfinder car is finished, so we're not releasing any more information than that at this time, but the ND parts are going to come back on the market. So that's bonus. So some of the questions we had about this beforehand is, does this mean that we're going to start working on LFX swaps, on K-series swaps, on Ecotech swaps, on, Lord, who knows, 1930s Alfa Romeo straight 8 GP engine swaps, whatever. And the answer is no, for all these same reasons. We don't have any plans to do more engine swaps because they all have the same concerns about all of this. One thing I will point out is that it was technically possible for us to get an EO for the ND V8s. There is a path to do that. It's not a cheap path. It would have required some significant investment, but it is technically, I think it would have been possible. However, that investment goes back into the business reasons again. So just because something is technically possible doesn't mean that it's necessarily financially viable. And when you're at home working on your own project car, financial viability is obviously not a major concern, as I very well know. But when you are a business who has to employ people and pay the bills, and you don't have an outside source of income, unfortunately, it is a factor. So what does this mean for future projects? Well, one of the reasons that we put Indy up on the block was to free up some funds to use for future projects. We do have some forced induction stuff underway right now. We have some ideas for alternative power adders of various sorts. We know we have the next generation Miata coming down on us before too long. We have to get ready for that, clear the decks, because there's going to be some interesting stuff on that. Mazda has talked about adding electrification to that platform, which I'm guessing is a hybrid system, but we're going to have to learn about that, see if there's anything we can do with it. And of course, we will do whatever we can within the emissions regulations because it's an interesting challenge, and we like clean air, and we plan to be around for a while. So that's, we've talked in the past about electrification. If you look on our YouTube channel, you'll see me standing up in front of a couple of cars rambling on about it. Who knows? We don't have solid plans on some of that, but there's also certainly some possibilities. We're going to keep working on interesting parts. The extra R&D resources that were freed up by shutting down the V8 builds have shown up in some of our new products, such as the dual caliper braking system that you saw, I think, last week. I was just looking at a prototype for a new intake system that's coming in that's going to be more affordable and easier to install than the one it replaces. This is all the sort of R&D that we're able to do now that we're not spending resources building one-off cars for customers. Do we have any more questions over there, Mike? Nope. Okay, well, there you go, folks. That is the background of the rise and fall of Flyin Miata V8s. We do miss them here. They're wonderful cars. 2 of the 3 cars behind me belong to people who work here because we still enjoy the cars very much, but unfortunately, Flyin Miata as a business is not going to be offering them anymore for all the reasons I just went on at great length about. If you enjoy this content, please do subscribe to our channel. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's always lots of different stuff being put up. Next week we'll be talking about Lord knows what. Last week was technical brake stuff. There's always something good coming down the pipe. So like, comment, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. My name's Keith Tanner from Flyin Miata.